How many hours? How long? I can smell it. I either smell beer or Saturday. There was once an artificial kingdom populated by artificial creatures who themselves were directed by artificial minds, but who achieved singular artificial successes, which you might note, by way of the definition of where they lived, was all that was needed. A man hearing this story said, "I detect some useful message therein. However, I do not like the use of the word artificial in its representation, in its presentation. Nor do I, sir, but nothing else is any closer, so deal with it." One man read books on awakening until they began to put him to sleep. Yeah. I should say until he became aware that they were putting him to sleep. If you keep on running, you never run out of road. One man studied books on enlightenment until they began pushing him even further into darkness. I should say, until he became aware that they were pushing him even further into darkness. There was once a mystical school name. No, that's not right. One man named his worst nightmare, "If you keep on running, you'll never run out of road." One man immersed himself in writings about liberation until they began to increase his captivity. I should say until he realized that they were increasing his captivity, and would you not agree that a pattern seems to be emerging here? A man thought, "If I hear one more attack on hamburgers, I believe for sure that I'll give up being a vegetarian." From behind the wheel, a father called out over his shoulder to a son sitting in the back seat, "The noise of traffic can certainly be distractive." And the lad questioningly yelled back, "Did you say can be destructive?" To which the elder replied in his own inquiring tone, "Instructive?" And the boy scratched his head, was silent for a moment, then shouted back, "I got to go to the bathroom." And the old man shook his head in sorrow over the fact of how readily the mind will ease its way out of uncomfortable situations, never hesitating to fall back on explanations as mundane as pee. Ad for advanced investors. When thought talks, all of the unenlightened listen. A man called up the phone company and said, "My phone is dead." And they asked, "Where are you calling from now?" And he replied, "Don't get personal." One man had this view: a mistake, well thought on, will cure itself. Another man held this position: a mistake, no matter how well attended, remains a mistake. And yet another fellow's approach is: a mistake with gravy on it is indistinguishable from anything else with gravy on it. One man named his dog, "Are you paying attention to me?" And the dog named him, "Huh?" How everything in life, besides ties and socks, must match. Okay, should match. All right, could match. After suffering not only the humiliation of the team's extremely poor play and lopsided loss in the championship game, the head coach was also the subject of much derision from the stands as he left the field. And later in the locker room, an interviewer said to him, "Well, Coach, after everything else that happened today, I guess that fan abuse was the last thing you needed." "Au contraire," he replied. "That's precisely why I chose this profession, rather than that of a chemist or mathematician, whose work has almost no possibility of making them eligible for such attacks and ridicule." In a certain land was once a certain statue which had an unusual ability. If it looked at the activity going on around it in a certain way, it could imagine that it was alive. And one man, upon hearing this story, said, "You don't fool me for a New York minute. I suspect full well what you're really talking about." One of the grand illusions is in you believing that you are truly interested in things that your brain chemistry says that you are, AKA the world's most costly hobby. Another great secret rule to run by is don't assume responsibility for anything you can't touch. If you didn't build it, you didn't build it. What distinguishes the enlightened mind from the ordinary mind is its lack of interaction. If you're not home now, you'll never get home. Another mark of difference between the liberated mind and the routine mind is in its absence of dependence. There was once a mystical school name. No, that's not true. One man named his own efforts. If you're not home now, you'll never get home. A man called up the county works department and said, "My sewer's backed up." And they asked, "Where are you calling from now?" And he didn't know. The variance between the awakened mind and the ordinary mind can also be seen in its non-stick coating. In a magical kingdom once lived a wild and beautiful bird with wondrous powers whose talents and comeliness was destroyed by captivity. And it could only be captured by causing it to care and have preferences, all such things being foreign to its native state. The first unpaved path out of Eden and the original path by which man attempted to return were both thought of by their builders as the way of no concern, which to routine ears is too likely to misinterpretation for public use, and thus have they since been known by other various names, none of which of much joy to an anxious traveler. A man on the platform asked the conductor, "But how can you be both an anxious traveler and have no concern?" "Ah," he replied, "there is the challenge." One man's present ponder, "If I could, which, in my mind, would I do? Turn off the bitch switch or the clock?" "Here over, here boy, good boy. It's all the same to me why you're here. All I care is that you're here." One man became aware that he had a most serious, quite personal illness, and one whose only possible treatment was in ceasing to be aware of it. Good boy, good Rover. The primary shortcoming of brain chemistry is that it cannot deal with the matter of brain chemistry. Another way to tell, another way to spot them. People talk about themselves in their sleep. A man so wondered, if fish did not laugh at birds and birds at fish, could either of them swim or fly? And quite suddenly his mind suggested that he not look at it with such an inquiry. One man had a blank piece of paper, but ha! Not for long. Whilst trying to orient some new underlings in the organization's operations, its head asked them if they understood why he had taken an action he just had. And one of them said that he didn't understand why hardly anybody takes the actions they do. And he was promptly promoted. To some, the physical world is particularly annoying because it is so unwieldy and unforgiving. Not at all like their sweet widow minds. One man said, "What we need are more formidable opponents. An idea either challenging and provocative or else silly beyond belief." At long, long last, as his execution seemed finally at hand, he said to the hangman, "I regret that I have but one imaginary neck to contribute to these proceedings, but which I feel sure will still be more than adequate, for after all, but the single one brought me this far after keeping me for so long from ever getting this far." And the hangman, being a servant of the people, was totally unable to make any sense of these words. To him, one man's mind said, "You're pretty clever." And he thought, "But how much more so were I not here at home with you?" On the horizontal landscape, all train cars will eventually hook up. "Better I told you," said that man, "it would be not to forever stay at home where the fully formed rail traffic can kill you to distraction by the sheer force of its endlessness." Although enlightenment does come about through the mind, it is not, however, via routine brain chemistry. Song for the mystic who's gone at least half the way there. A mirror never runs out of something to look at. A song title that one man discovered, which became his favorite, was "I've Gone Too Far to Turn Back Now," to which he added the words, "I hope, I hope, I hope." In his reflections, one man so mused, "A man awakened could surely express the truth of life in but a sentence. But a man fully enlightened could surely say it in but a single word. Ah, but surely a man totally freed from our routine inner condition would know that no word is adequate, no word is needed." On a faraway planet were once some beings who had a particular organ whose operation seemed based on the fact that the beings totally misread what its operations were. And I don't know about you, but I personally feel that the further such worlds stay away from us, the better. Life one day decided it would be good for Earth to have some travel agents to promote the place, but then realized it already did. 6 billion of them. 6 billion sycophantic, catatonic, chauvinistic, one-eyed, lame, work for free, flag wavers for a place in which they actually had no vested interest. Does life know how to operate or what? Now some pugilistic news for those not already terminally punch drunk. Thinking was the original inspiration for shadowboxing. The sheriff stepped out in the street and called to the members of the Willie Neural Gang, warning them that he wanted everyone out of town by sunset who were packing parentheses or quotation marks. One of man's prime misdiagnoses is in believing that major ills call for major treatments. In fact, and even believing that man has major ills. That's Lieutenant Colonel to you, Private. Maybe you had to read it. But then again, in the dark with gravy on them, they all look alike. In one exotic kingdom, when the ruler declares death to the infidels, he is praising those who have broken their mirrors. After his daily address to those there, the head of one mystical school added this: At most what I said is good for today only. and closer to the truth is good only for the time it took you to hear it. Advanced traveler's tip. Stay alert. Whenever the train gets near Istanbul, it slows down. Every time it thus slows down, it does not necessarily pull into the city, but you should keep this fact in mind and act on it whenever you're aware of any slowing down, whatever the reason it may turn out to be. You're not truly on the trip if you do not grab every opportunity, no matter how slight, no matter how momentary. The thing about routine brain chemistry is that it is little given to turning its attention to what's at hand in matters other than external. Thinking is like an obsession, and more thinking is not the cure. A distinction between the land of the liberated and the routine world is that the latter can construct buildings and skyscrapers, whole cities, made of mirrors. Thought is the only crop reaped on this planet that is not sown here. One mystic had an offer. For a small fee, he would tell you everything necessary to understand life in 4 words, which turned out to be, what's there to understand? Freedom, another view. Anything is free that you don't think about. Finding available mystical approaches too lengthy, one man constructed his own, which he called Watch It, but soon found even this one overly cumbersome and shortened it to Beware, only to eventually be bothered by what he considered to be its unwarranted verbosity and changed it to a silent shrug. Later, as a finishing touch, this became a smiling, silent shrug.